Hi everyone, it's Admin Rowena of Can Night vs. Go Pig Fast Facebook page. This is my third video I have uploaded to YouTube. I have done Ask the Admin, Harry Potter in 99 Seconds, and now I'm reading half the first chapter of Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. As admins will be continuing Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, all taking alternative parts of chapters. We are splitting the chapters in half and want us to reread them. I'm starting off with Harry Potter and Philosopher's Stone, Chapter 1, The Boy Who Lived. Sorry, I've got second page. This is my copy. Third time filming, hopefully third time lucky. Mr. and Mrs. Dursley of number 4 Privet Drive were proud to say they were perfectly normal, thank you very much. They were the last people you expect to be involved in anything strange or mysterious, because they just didn't hope for such nonsense. Mrs. Dursley was the director of films of a firm called Grinnings, which he drilled. He was a big beefy man with hardly any neck, although he did have a very large moustache. Mrs. Dursley was thin and blonde, and had nearly twice the amount of usual neck, which came very useful since she spent so much of her time craning over the garden fences spying on the neighbours. Dursley had a small son called Dudley, and in their opinion there was no finer boy anywhere. The Dursleys had been given the Dursley had Sorry, getting tongue-tied. Alright. The Dursleys had everything they wanted, but they also had a secret, and the greatest fear was that someone would discover it. They couldn't, they didn't think they could bear it if anyone found out about the Potters. Mrs. Potter was Mrs. Dursley's sister, but they hadn't met in several years. In fact, Mrs. Dursley pretended she didn't have a sister because her sister and her good-for-nothing husband were as undursley-ish as it was possible to be. The Dursleys shuddered to think what our neighbours would say if the Potters arrived in the street. The Dursleys knew that the Potters had a small son too, but they'd never even seen him. This boy was another good reason for keeping the Potters away. They didn't want Dudley mixing with a child like that. When Mr. and Mrs. Dursley woke up on a dull, grey Tuesday morning our story starts, there was nothing about the cloudy sky outside to suggest that strange, mysterious things would soon be happening all over the country. Mr. Dursley hummed as he picked out his most boring type of work, and Mrs. Dursley gossiped away happily as she wrestled a screaming Dudley into his high chair. Nonsense noticed a large, tawny owl flutter past the window. At 8:30, Mr. Dursley picked up his briefcase, pecked Mrs. Dursley on the cheek, and tried to kiss Dudley goodbye, but missed, because Dudley was now having a tantrum and throwing his cereal at the walls. Little tyke, he chortled as he left the house. He got into his car, back down the Forest Drive. It was at the corner of the street that he noticed the first sign of something peculiar. A cat reading a map. For a second, Mr. Dursley didn't realize what he had seen. Then he jerked his head around and looked again. There was a tabby cat standing in the corner of Philosopher Drive, and there wasn't a map in sight. What could he have been thinking of? It must have been a trick of the light. Mr. Dursley blinked and stared at the cat. It stared back as Mr. Dursley drove around the corner and up the road. He watched the cat in his mirror. It was now reading a sign that said Privet Drive. No, looking at the sign. Cats can read maps or signs. Mr. Dursley gave himself a little shake and put the cat out of his mind. As he drove towards town, he thought of nothing except the large oriel drills he was hoping to get that day. But on the edge of town, drills were driven out of his mind by something else. As he sat in the usual morning traffic jam, he couldn't help noticing that there seemed to be a lot of strangely dressed people about. People in cloaks. Mr. Dursley couldn't bear the people who dressed in funny clothing. The gets you saw in young people. He supposed that this was some stupid new fashion. He drummed his fingers on the steering wheel. His eyes fell on the huddle of these weirdos standing quite close by. They were whispering excitedly together. Mr. Dursley was enraged to see that a couple of them weren't young at all. Why, that man had to be older than he was, and wearing an emerald green cloak. The nerve of him! It then struck Mr. Dursley that this was probably some silly stunt. These people obviously collect them for something. Yes, that would be it. The traffic moves on, and a few minutes later, Mr. Dursley arrives at Grinning's car park, his mind back on drills. Mr. Dursley always sat with his back to the window of his office, on the ninth floor. If he hadn't, he might have found it harder to concentrate on drills that morning. He didn't see the owls swooping past in broad daylight, though people down the street did. They pointed and gazed, open mouthed, as owl after owl spread overhead. Most of them had never seen an owl, even at night time. Mr. Dursley, however, had a perfectly normal owl-free morning. He yelled at 5 different people. He made several important phone calls and shouted a bit more. He was very good mood until lunchtime, when he thought he'd stretch his legs and walk across the road to buy himself a bun from the baker's opposite. He'd forgotten all about people in cloaks until he passed a group of them next to the baker's. He eyed them angrily as he passed. He didn't know why, but they made him so uneasy. His lot were whispering excitedly too, and he couldn't see a single collecting tin in sight. It was only on his way back past them, clutching a large stone in the bag, that he caught a few words they were saying. The Potters. That's right. That's what I heard. Yes, their son, Harry. Mr. Dursley stopped dead. Fear flooded him. He looked back at the whisperers as if he wanted to say something to them, but thought better of it. He dashed back across the road, hurried up to his office, snapped at the secretary not to disturb him, seized his telephone, and almost finished dialing his home number when he changed his mind. He put the receiver back down and stroked his moustache, thinking. No, he was being stupid. Potter was an unusual name. Usually there was lots of people called Potter who had a son called Harry. Come to think of it, he was even sure his nephew was called Harry. He'd never even seen the boy. It might have been Harvey, or Harold. There was no point in worrying Mrs. Dursley. She always got so upset at any mention of her sister. He didn't blame her if he'd had a sister like that. All the same, those people in clothes. He found it a lot harder to concentrate on drills that afternoon, and when he left the building at 5 o'clock, he was still worried that he'd walked straight into someone just out the door. Sorry, he grunted, as a tiny old man stumbled and almost fell. A few seconds before Mr. Dursley realized that the man was wearing a violet cloak. He didn't seem at all upset at being almost knocked to the ground. On the contrary, his face split into a wide smile, and he said in a squeaky voice that made passers-by stare, "Don't be sorry, my dear sir, for nothing could upset me today. Rejoice, for you know who has gone at last. Even muggles like yourself should be celebrating this happy, happy day." And the old man hugged Mr. Dursley around the middle and walked off. Mr. Dursley stood rooted to the spot. He had been hugged by a complete stranger. He also thought he'd been called a muggle, whatever that was. He was rattled. He hurried to his car and set off home, hoping he was imagining things, which he had never hoped before, because he didn't approve of imagination. As he pulled into the driveway of number 4, the first thing he saw, and it didn't improve his mood, was the tabby cat he'd spotted that morning. It was now sitting on his garden wall. He was sure it was the same one. It had the same markings around its eyes. "Shoo!" said Mr. Dursley loudly. "That cat didn't move. It just gave him a stern look." Was this normal cat behaviour? Mr. Dursley wondered, trying to pull himself together. He let himself into the house. He was still determined not to mention anything to his wife. Mrs. Dursley had a nice normal day. She told him over dinner all about it. Mrs. Next Door's problem to her daughter, and how Dudley had learned a new word, "shan't." Mr. Dursley tried to act normally. When Dudley had been put to bed, he went into the living room in time to catch the last report on the evening news. And finally, bird watchers everywhere have reported that the nation's owls have been acting very unusually today. Although normally owls hunt at night, and hardly ever seen in daylight, there have been hundreds of sightings of these birds flying in every direction since sunrise. Experts are unable to explain why the owls have suddenly changed their sleeping pattern. The newsreader allowed himself to grin. Most mysterious. Now over to Jim Guffin with the weather. Going to be any more showers of owls tonight, Jim? Well, Ted, the weatherman said, I don't know about that. It's not only owls that have been acting lovely today. You as far as Kent, Yorkshire and Dundee have been phoning in to tell me that instead of the rain outcomes yesterday, there's been downpour shooting stars. Perhaps people have been celebrating bomb night early. It's not until next week, folks. But I can promise you a wet night tonight. Mr. Jersey sat frozen in his armchair, shooting stars all over Britain, owls flying by daylight, mysterious people in cloaks, all over the place, and a whisper about Potters. Potters. Mrs. Jersey came into the living room, carried 2 cups of tea. It was no good. He had to say something to her. He cleared his throat nervously. Petunia, dear, you haven't heard from your sister lately, have you? As he had expected, Mrs. Jersey looked shocked and angry. After all, they normally pretended she didn't have a sister. No, she said sharply. Why? Funny stuff on the news, Mr. Jersey mumbled. Owls, shooting stars. And there was a lot of funny-looking people in town today. So, Mr. Jersey snapped. Well, I just thought maybe it was something to do, her lot. Mrs. Jersey sipped her tea through pursed lips. Mr. Jersey wondered whether he dared to tell her he heard the name Potter. He decided he didn't dare. Instead, he said casually he could. Listen, it's about Dudley playing the sharp now with Windy. I suppose so, Mrs. Jersey said stiffly. What's his name again? Howard, isn't it? Harry. Nasty common name, if you ask me. Oh, yes, Mr. Jersey, said Mr. Jersey, his heart sinking horribly. Yes, I quite agree. He didn't say another word to his wife on the subject as he went upstairs to bed. Mrs. Jersey was in the bathroom. Mr. Jersey crept in the bedroom window and peered down into the garden. The cat was still there. It was staring down through its eyes as though it had been waiting for something. Was he imagining things? Could all this have been anything to do with the Potters? If it did, if it got out they were related as a pair of, well, he didn't think he could bear it. Jersey got into bed. Mrs. Jersey fell asleep quickly, but Mr. Jersey lay awake, turning all over in his mind. His last comforting thought before he fell asleep was that even if the Potters were involved, there was no reason for them to come near him and Mrs. Jersey. The Potters knew very well what he and Miss Junior thought of them and their kind. He couldn't see how he and Miss Junior were mixed up in anything that might be going on. He yawned and turned over. It couldn't affect them. How very wrong he was. Alright, that's the end of part 1 of 2 of chapter 1. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'm really sorry if you couldn't hear me at certain points, or if you can't really see me. I am working with a webcam, which is really bad, but I'm glad I actually did it, and I hope you enjoyed. I will be back during probably chapter 3 or 4. Yeah, so I hope you join us on this journey and enjoy. Please comment below, follow us on Twitter, follow me on Twitter, like the page, and I will leave all the links below. Bye.